Most of what I am wearing on my face requires no introduction. You've probably seen enough face masks to have your fill for a lifetime. However, you may have noticed that there's two little silicone thingies pointing out from inside my mask. And you may have even wondered what they are part of. And so this video is to explain that and why it is so tragic that the thing that they are part of is not something that more people know about. So I will explain all that in just a moment. Hello, Internet. This is Sophia, the Red Angel, doing my best effort on this channel to produce content that is worth your time to watch and listen to. Today's production, I must start with a disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I am not a nurse. For that matter, I am not a medical professional of any kind. I am just a person who experienced genuine difficulty fulfilling the need to wear a mask during the pandemic, but who found ways to overcome those difficulties. I shoot most of my videos, including this one, in the privacy of my own residence, where there is not anyone else around for me to infect or be infected by. The reason why I was wearing a mask before the opening title was to show you what I wear when I am in other places where masks are necessary. Basically, I wear this mask on my face, and to allow me to wear it as long as I need to, I wear this bracket underneath my mask. Later on in this video, I will get into why wearing a mask without the bracket presents a problem for me, as well as how the bracket solves the problem. But first, and probably most important in the grand scheme of things, I need to discuss the utter silence I tend to hear from other proponents of masking about difficulties people face in masking. Because frankly, if it were not for that problem, you would have heard by now plenty about brackets, among many other things, from people with platforms far larger than mine. Now, do not get me wrong. I am not claiming that I am the only proponent of masking, or even of mask mandates, who has ever publicly mentioned the difficulties that some people face in masking. Not by a long shot. I am pretty sure that there are others who have maybe mentioned it once in a while. Unfortunately, though, most of what you hear about difficulties that some people face wearing masks is heard from the mouths of people who oppose the very necessary insistence that we must wear them. From people such as myself who are proponents of wearing masks and even of mask mandates, you seldom hear about such difficulties at all. I find that status quo to be very problematic for a number of reasons. For starters, the message that it sends to people that experience such problems is that proponents of masking are dismissive of these difficulties and might cause some of them to take that line of thinking a step further and conclude that if we did take such issues seriously, we would be less insistent on the wearing of masks. This, of course, could not possibly be further from the truth. The difficulties that some people face in masking is real, but for the time being, properly wearing masks is still very, very, very necessary for the public health. Being completely mum about difficulties people face in masking is the opposite of what we should be doing if we want more people to take the requirement for wearing masks seriously. But there is also another problem with our tendency to allow anti-maskers to monopolize any mentions of difficulties that people face in masking. The problem is that the only things that get talked about in the way of solutions to these problems are the so-called solutions that the anti-maskers favor. Very bad so-called solutions, such as going without masks fighting against mandates, etc. These so-called solutions, of course, are not actual solutions, and they are very harmful because we are in the midst of a frelling pandemic, which in all likelihood would not have gotten as bad and possibly not even lasted as long if it were not for the anti-maskers as well as the anti-vaxxers, many of whom are the same people, refusing to do their part in protecting society from a dangerous disease. By letting them dominate discussions about the difficulties some people face in masking, we lose the opportunity to both come up with and spread awareness of real solutions to those problems. Solutions that seek not to get anyone out of the requirement to mask, other than, of course, by bringing the pandemic closer to its end, at which point it will no longer be needed, but rather to make it more practical for more people to mask in a way that is sufficient for the purpose of fighting the spread of a dangerous illness. I can continue making videos like this one about the solutions that I found to the problems that I faced, but I do not know that the difficulties that I face represent the full spectrum of all difficulties that people have faced in masking. Furthermore, even for those who do experience the same difficulties, I do not know whether or not my solutions would work for all of them. But if we talked about these issues more, we would be able to come up with and spread awareness of more solutions. We would probably even be able to make more solutions available. Also, as I mentioned in my opening disclaimer, I am not a medical professional of any kind, so I do not know if the solutions that I offer to these problems are the best ones. But perhaps if the silence were broken, we might hear people who are medical professionals and more likely to know chime in with their solutions to these genuine difficulties. But you will not hear those solutions from them until this silence is broken, which is why the urgency in breaking this silence is the number one most important thing that I can say on this topic, far more important than any specifics about what difficulties I have faced in wearing a mask and what specific solutions worked for me. At any rate, I have a rather large face, so the one-size-fits-most masks that fit most well, they do not fit my face. Some of them could have maybe worked for me if I were careful to keep my jaw frozen in place at all times and possibly taken some other measures as well. However, given my autism, as I am autistic, those measures were a bigger hill to climb for me than they might have been for a neuronormative person. So to make a long story short, I needed a bigger mask. But those disposable masks that you find everywhere, they seem to only be available in two sizes, kid's size and one size fits most but not me size. And those KN95 masks that you hear about, if your face is the size of mine, then forget it. The lack of availability of those kinds of masks in larger sizes is in itself a problem, but in order to not have this video take forever, I will not be talking about that problem anymore in this video. Rather, I took the only option available to me. I went online and ordered cloth masks that are large enough for my face. And then I added this back strap to them just to prevent them from slipping off of my nose every time my jaw moved. Because I don't want to become part of the below the nose crowd every time that my attention slips away from the constant vigilance that I would have to exercise against the mask slipping, which could happen no matter how committed I am to wearing my mask properly, because if something is important enough to draw me out of my home in the midst of this pandemic, chances are this is something that also might demand a little bit of my attention as well. But then something else went wrong. When I breathe in, wearing such a mask, the mask gets sucked into my face. This is because cloth masks do not have much in the way of solid structure. Why is this a problem? Well, masks have to be porous enough to let air in and out for us to breathe, but not so porous as to allow the virus-carrying droplets of moisture to get through. How does it achieve those conflicting goals? The answer is surface area. As a side effect of being tight enough to keep the moisture droplets from getting through, the mask's fabric also creates some resistance to air getting through. This resistance makes breathing more laborious, but just as parallel circuitry reduces resistance in electronics, having more surface area reduces the amount of resistance to airflow that the moisture-blocking cloth produces. But when the mask gets sucked into your face, that strategy falls apart because the only surface area that is available for that purpose is the little bit that is over your open mouth. That makes breathing very laborious, and, at least in my case, I had trouble doing it for very long before I had to take a rest from doing this. Fortunately, I was privileged enough to be in a situation where I could pretty much avoid going out altogether while the situation was unresolved. A lot of people do not share that privilege. But what solution did I eventually find? That is where the bracket comes into the question. I simply wear it under the mask, and it does one thing. It prevents the mask from getting sucked into my face when I breathe in. The result? The mask is still uncomfortable enough to make me eager for the day that this blasted pandemic comes to an end. But it is no longer so laborious to breathe that I am not able to wear the mask whenever I am either A, in a common indoor space, or B, anywhere in a crowd. I still do not enjoy wearing a mask, but I am now able to wear it for as long as it is necessary for me to do so. Granted, the problems I face are not necessarily the full spectrum of difficulties that people face in masking, and my solution, those might not be workable for everyone either. This is why, as I said, we, as proponents of masking, need to break the silence and talk about such difficulties, both for the purpose of finding and spreading awareness of solutions, and also to assure anyone who still struggles that our insistence on the importance of masking is not out of ignorance or of disregard for the difficulties that they face. Rather, the insistence is really simply because masking is really, really that necessary. Anyway, I hope that this video gets the ball rolling on discussing this much neglected topic. Please leave your comments in the comments area below. Anti-masking and anti-vaxxing comments are not welcome here, but comments on genuine difficulties faced that are at least seeking solutions will be appreciated, whether or not they actually are able to offer any solutions. Also, make sure that the like button is pressed, as well as the subscribe button, and ring the bell. Also, in the video description area, you can find a link to the Stay in Touch page of my blog, where you can find additional ways to keep up with the goings-on of this channel. The Stay in Touch page even offers a link to my Discord server. So, keep your minds open, while at the same time keeping them tethered to reality. And until next time, see ya!